All right, how are we feeling? Excited? Of course we're excited. Bills won the AFC East for the second year in a row. They beat the Jets on Sunday, 27-10. Another game where they kind of fooled around for a half, maybe 3/4 of the game, at least on offense. Jets are hanging around, but they're really not much of a threat. Was anybody actually thinking the Bills were going to lose that game? I mean, the Jets ended up with 53 yards of offense. That type of production from the Bills defense, I should say, secured their rank as the number one overall defense in terms of scoring, in terms of total yards. Very happy for them there. So I'm excited. Excited about that. Excited to move into the playoffs, get a home playoff game with a full Highmark Stadium. That's all that is very excited. But I'm a little nervous too. I think we're all feeling just slightly uneasy. Maybe a couple of factors going into that. The number one factor that goes into that is, okay, any one of these games could be the last time I watch the Bills this year. I hate when the season's over. I mean, I've never experienced when it ends with a Super Bowl victory, obviously, and I imagine that the euphoria of that would carry on through the entire offseason. It must. I don't know. Maybe Patriots fans can tell me. I don't really know. I don't know. I hope to find out one day, hopefully within the next 4 to 6 weeks. But the fact that the season could really end at any one of these weeks it makes me feel uneasy. Because if it were to end this Saturday night, that would be a disappointment. Anything would be a disappointment, but like the overall season would be a disappointment. The Bills would be 11-6. They won a division. That's great, but you have these high expectations for them. I talked about this leading up to the season, that really the expectation is kind of AFC Championship again, isn't it? And the only acceptable really outcome, I suppose, is, acceptable is not the right word. Like, if they lost in the AFC Championship again, would you be upset? I mean, of course you're upset. You're disappointed about that. But is it still a successful season? The Bills would tell you that it's not. Sean McDermott would tell you that it's not. Josh Allen would tell you that it's not, of course. But, I mean, you're in the Final Four. And there's this one caveat to it that I mentioned at the beginning of the year as well, and that would be that it would have to be to Kansas City. Now, there is actually no chance, I think, that the Bills play Kansas City in the AFC Championship. I don't think it's not possible. It's definitely not possible, because a couple of scenarios played out in Week 18, the first ever regular season. I don't know if it's the first ever regular season, Week 18. Did there used to be 2 bye weeks? I'm not sure. You know what makes me say that is I used to have Madden like 94, 95, and there were 18 weeks because there were 2 bye weeks. That's just a video game, but I don't know. I digress. Anyway, Cincinnati loses to Cleveland. The Bills win. So, Cincinnati rested Joe Burrow at least, and the Bills win. So the Bills move ahead of Cincinnati. Kansas City on Saturday, Denver kind of had them on the ropes. I don't know about on the ropes, but of course. Of course that fumble happens. Of course they return it for a touchdown. Of course Drew Lock can't go down and answer. Just of course. I think you were hoping maybe that Houston beat Tennessee, or maybe you think it's, I thought it was certainly possible. I don't think Houston gets a lot of, not credit, but like a lot of crap, I guess, for being like the worst team in the league, and I don't think they're the worst team in the league. I don't want to say by far, but they went 4-13. But Jacksonville, the Jets. You watched the Jets on Sunday. What is their deal? Okay, Detroit, obviously, whatever. It's not a video about Houston. But I was hopeful out there, maybe just for the sake of Kansas City, maybe getting the 1 seed, and then in the second round the Bills could draw the Titans again. And I think we want that matchup. Do we want that matchup? In terms of like emotional attachment, the Bills would be getting their most emotional games out of the way in these first 2 weeks of the playoffs. New England ends up with the 6th seed by virtue of their loss to Miami. The Raiders jump them by virtue of their overtime win against the Chargers. So If the Bills had lost, they still would have won the division because New England lost, and then they would have ended up playing the Raiders at home. Is that a better matchup for you? I don't know. The 2 seed, the Chiefs, they get the Steelers. I think that's a really good matchup. I mean, the Steelers just seem kind of pathetic. Negative 55-point differential. The Raiders had minus 65. And then there's the Patriots with plus 159. Now they beat up on the Jets. They beat up on the Jaguars. But it's just funny that out of the 3 wildcard teams, the Bills draw the Patriots, the Belichick of it. And that's where, as I mentioned a minute or so ago, the emotional attachment comes from. So you're getting New England right away. That this ghost that you've been chasing for 2 decades. Now, Tom Brady's not there, but Bill Belichick is there, and you want to just wash yourself of all of this. You want to beat New England in the playoffs, say, hey, we won the division last year, this year, we're going to beat you in the playoffs because we're better than you. We're a better team than you. Might occasionally beat us if the weather's bad. The weather might be bad on Saturday, but not to the same degree that it was on Monday Night Football. Degree, that might be a pun there. Haha. Anyway, you just have to establish that this Patriot dominance is over. And if you're able to get past that, you're probably moving on to Kansas City in the second round. And there's the emotional connection there because that's who the Bills lost to in the AFC Championship last year. They beat them this year on Sunday Night Football by 3 scores in their building. So they're going back to that building, presumably, if they're able to beat the Patriots, if the Chiefs are able to beat the Steelers at home. I think a lot of people think that's going to happen. The Bills automatically go to Kansas City in the second round. So as far as, like I said, emotional connection goes to the opponent, the AFC Championship, whether it's against Tennessee, Cincinnati, the Raiders, that might be the least connection you feel. So the Bills have to wash themselves, like I said, of these demons, and they're not even really demons. Like, the demons of the Patriots, to me, are gone, but they could all come rushing back, I guess. That possibility is there. They could all come rushing back if the Patriots beat the Bills on Saturday night. So we have to talk about this matchup. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and talk about the Jets anymore. That game was hilarious. Of course the Bills cover. They're fiddling around for 3 quarters, 13-10, and then suddenly they cover. Because the Bills always cover, come close. They always win by 2 scores. All of their wins this year are by at least 2 scores. They always do it. So that, color me a little surprised when the Bills are favored by 4. They should be favored by 9 or, 8.5 or underdogs, I guess. What would make you think that it's going to be a 1-score game? What would make anyone think that it's going to be a 1-score game? Is it the weather? I guess let's talk about the weather. Okay, let's get this weather thing out of the way. It's supposed to be a high of 10 and like a low of 2. So it's going to be cold, but it's not going to be windy like it was on Monday Night Football a month or so ago. Is that going to impact the game? Maybe, to a certain extent. I couldn't even explain to you how. I try not to worry about what I can't really control. And if there's no wind, I don't see why it would be a factor. I don't want all these... Twitter is just going off on all these statistics about, well, Josh Allen or the Bills in under 32 degrees and freezing temperatures versus Belichick in freezing temperatures, whatever. Belichick's never been in a playoff game without Tom Brady. We don't know how that's going to go. I mean, that's the more important story to me than the weather. The weather is what it is. Let's look more at the matchup. How do these 2 teams match up with each other? The first meeting, one of the most I don't respect you performances by the Patriots that I've seen in a long time. Just hand it off. Stop us. I don't need to score these points. You're not going to score points on me. Handoff, handoff, handoff. 46 handoffs or something like that versus 3 pass attempts. They win. Now, I think the weather was a story there, because the Bills met the Patriots 3 weeks later in Foxborough, and they beat them by 2 scores, because of course they did. The Bills pretty much scored on just about every possession, or they were inside the 20-yard line on every possession. Allen was quoted after the game running through the tunnel as like, I don't know who they thought I was, because the Patriots just never rushed them. I don't think that you're going to get that type of strategy once again from the Patriots. I mean, they usually never recycle game plans. They'll always have something different to throw at you. So I would anticipate that it'll be a little bit tougher. Maybe, especially, maybe right out of the gate. I don't know if the Bills will just move the ball at will against the Patriots. I want to give a little credit to the Patriots defense. I do think they beat up on some cupcakes. The Bills beat up on some cupcakes as well. They have they might have the two highest point differentials in the entire league. Tampa Bay is 1 point behind New England. Okay, Dallas. So Dallas has the second best behind the Bills. And then the Patriots would be third, and the Bucs would be fourth. So there you have it. There you have it. To give the Patriots defense a little bit of credit here, Matt Judon, what more can be said about him? Fantastic player, knows what it takes, especially in the playoffs. He's been there with Baltimore. A really trusted veteran in the Patriots defense. Dante Hightower, same thing. Always seems to play better when it's playoff time. They should have Christian Barmore. Looked like he had a health scare last week. Had to be carted off, but is just magically fine, I guess. So he's a nice young player for them on the defensive line. I think he could make a difference. But he was there for them when the Bills won 33-21 as well. Kyle Duggar could be out. They're playing a weird game with Kyle Duggar. I don't really know what's going on there. They listed him as limited through at least once this week, but he wasn't present for the media. So he's dealing with a hand issue, so maybe they don't want the media to see what's going on with his hand. Maybe it's wrapped big time, something to that extent. The Patriots are known to do weird things, circumventing the injury report, or to kind of, fiddle with it, or just navigate it in a funky manner. They've been known to do that. They've been known to do sketchy things, not just with the injury report. Maybe we should check the PSI of the balls. It's going to be really cold. It's going to be really cold. Maybe something will happen. It's worth checking. Certainly worth checking. Anyway, Duggar. Don't really know. Don't know what's going to happen there. Jalen Mills, one of their starting corners, is on the COVID list. I do believe he can be activated Saturday morning. So he is still a possible. He could still play, but they did elevate a couple of corners, I believe, from the practice squad to the active roster. So maybe they're thinking about, there. Maybe it's Joejuan Williams. Either way, advantage Bills. Stephon Diggs already has a very good track record against J.C. Jackson. And now you're going to put Emmanuel Sanders, who's basically at full health. The Bills are basically at full health. Nobody on the injury report. The only injury to even speak of is Tre'Davious White. The Bills just have this seemingly miraculous health record over the past couple of years. Since McDermott's really been the coach, they've been very, very healthy, especially later in the season. And it's certainly benefited them. I mean, the Trey White thing, would you love to have Trey White? Of course. But to have everyone else it's impressive. It's certainly impressive. So, where was I with the Patriots? So, yeah, the Bills have the advantage, I think, with Emmanuel Sanders, with Gabe Davis, with Cole Beasley against the Patriots secondary. Sean Wade's on COVID as well, I think, but weird player. Always thought he was going to be very good coming out of Ohio State and just isn't. But I'm sure they would love to have Jalen Mills, and I'm just trusting Diggs against J.C. Jackson. I'm just trusting him. I'm trusting Allen. Trusting all of them. The Bills are healthier, and I think the Bills are better. You think Mac Jones in this freezing cold weather. I do the Scott Hall, weather. But do I think Mac Jones is built for it? He just played in Miami. He went like 20 of 30 for like 200 yards, a touchdown, and a pick six. And that's in Miami. The Patriots have this weird track record in Miami, too. Belichick might even have a losing record there, which is just hilarious. Football is weird. Football is certainly weird like that. But I like the Bills here. I've a couple times this season, I'm like, I'm not picking the Bills until they prove to me that the Patriots aren't back. And the last time, the only win the Patriots have, I think, in the last 4 weeks is Jacksonville. Yes, they beat the Bills. They went on the bye. They've gone 1-3 since then. They lost to Indianapolis, another big story, missing the playoffs, losing to Jacksonville themselves. They lost to the Bills. They destroyed Jacksonville, and then they lost to Miami. They've dropped 3 out of 4. What does that mean? Nothing, really. They've dropped 3 out of 4 to start the season as well. They were 1-3. They had turned the ball over 7 times. 7 times in the 3 losses. Oddly enough, I'm looking at it right now. In their last 3 losses, they've turned the ball over 7 times. They've still gotten their yards. 379 against Miami, 471 against Jacksonville, 288 against the Bills. A lot of that was on the ground. A lot of this has been on the ground. 181 against Jacksonville, 134 against Miami. Indy, they dug themselves a hole too deep too early, and they couldn't claw themselves out of it. They allow a long run to Taylor, and they end up losing the game. That's essentially what gives the division back to the Bills the following week, by virtue of the Bills' 12-point win. So I'm picking the Bills. I'm picking them. I don't know what else to say. I like Allen in this game. I like Allen in just about every game. There's been this looming story that I've talked about with him this year about comebacks, one-score games. The Bills would have literally 1 loss if you flipped their entire schedule with if you just flipped the one-score games on their schedule in favor of the Bills. Because they didn't win by 1 score ever. So if you just flipped the one-score games, they'd be 16-1. That's how good the Bills have been when they've been good. I'm optimistic, uneasy but optimistic, cautiously optimistic. What's the word you want to use here? I'm picking the Bills. Bills to beat the Patriots, 27-16 by 2 scores. Because of course the Bills always win by 2 scores. Guys, I want you to hit me up on Twitter. I want to talk about this. I'm invested. Obviously, I'm invested. You're invested. It's the playoffs. 4th time in 5 seasons. Don't take this for granted. We know what the other side of this is like. So hit me up on Twitter. My Twitter handle and YouTube username are the same. Hope to see you all at the stadium on Saturday night, all bundled up. Enjoy your weekend, as always. Above all else, go Bills.